Hey there, welcome to Pickled Parables. This podcast is presented by Parable Ministries as a Bible teaching resource. Thank you for joining us. Pickled Parables is a podcast about taking in and living out the Bible. Here we will study, contemplate, and testify to the Bible's incredible teachings and how it leads us to live better lives. To stay up to date with all things Parable, follow us on Instagram at parable_ministries and visit our website at parableministries.com. We hope today's message finds you well.
Alrighty, y'all. Welcome back to Pickled Parables. This is another Pickled Chats. I'm one of your hosts, Hunter Hoover, and I'm joined again by Jesse Turkington. Jesse, how are you?
Hey, Hunter. I'm doing well. Listeners, I'm glad you're here. We have very fun conversation for you today.
Yeah, I'm excited. So we're going to be doing another one of our God and sinners in our we've done a few of these now. We're going to be exploring a couple of sinners in the Bible, or maybe a group of them, and just kind of, again, the goal of this. I was thinking about this as I was listening back on the last one a couple months back. Is the goal of this is not like to thumb our nose at these people in the Bible and say, oh, look at you look how awful you were, and how it is to learn not just maybe an example of what not to do in some cases, but also like just God's ability to work with and work through and accomplish his purposes despite the sin that we see evident in many of the characters of the Bible. So I'm going to be sharing first. And I'm going to be continuing my attempt at picking super obscure Bible characters that hopefully, listener, one day if you're like on a Bible trivia show, you get like a free answer because you'll remember that we talked about it. No, but I am bringing Doeg the Edomite. So another great name if you are expecting or are looking forward to having a child soon. Maybe add Doeg to the list. It might be the one. But Doeg the Edomite, he's not a super well-known character, and rightfully so. He doesn't get a lot of screen time, if you will. But his first mention is in his only mention is in the book of 1 Samuel. And he comes up in 1 Samuel. He gets his first note in 1 Samuel 21. And just to give you some context, because the context is going to be key with Doeg and why I want to talk about him. But he pops up. David is on the run, freshly on the run from King Saul. This is right after Jonathan, Saul's son, pretty much commits treason and lets David know, no, my dad intends to kill you. You should probably get out of here before he can. And so David splits. He hightails it, and it says that David came to the land of Nob, to a priest named Ahimelech. And while he's there, this is the scene where David he's tired, he's worn out, and so it's 1 Samuel 21, I'll just read it. Verse 2, it says, David said to Ahimelech the priest, the king has charged me with a matter and said to me, let no one know anything of the matter about which I send you and with which I have charged you. I have made an appointment with the younger men for such and such a place. Now then, what do you have on hand? Give me 5 loaves of bread or whatever is here. And so David, for lack of a better way of explaining it, he lied to this priest. That was not a mission that the king had sent him on. Again, he's fleeing from the king, but he tells the king, the priest, I've been sent here by the king, and I need some bread, and just give me whatever you have on hand, or give me 5 loaves. And the priest is like, I don't have any common bread, but I do have the bread that's been set apart, the holy bread. And he kind of turns it over to David, and David and his men eat this bread. They do the thing. And now I've introed Doeg, and you're like, did my audio cut out and he said David and it no. I want to talk about Doeg here because we are told that as all of this is happening and David is having this interaction with Ahimelech the priest, Doeg the Edomite, in verse 7, it says, "Now a certain man of the servants of Saul was there that day, detained before the Lord. His name was Doeg the Edomite, the chief of Saul's herdsmen." So this servant of Saul just so happens to be in the area that David is in. Now, there's a lot of like argument and discussion about what it means he's detained by the Lord. There's some that think it's like it's near the Sabbath, and so he can't move because if he was to journey back to Saul on that day, he would be working on the Sabbath. There's others that think that maybe Doeg has taken a vow to Ahimelech on his way back to Saul, and he has to fulfill that vow before he moves on. But whatever the case is, we don't really get all the super intricate details. We're just told that there's this man named Doeg. He is like Saul's chief herdsman, so he keeps the sheep. There's some fun parallel to David being a shepherd for his father in the person of Doeg, but also that he's just so happens to be stuck right where David flees to. And from here, so that's what we get. We get like Doeg sees David, and he's like, I know that guy. Where many others in the area were probably like, oh yeah, he's on a mission from the king. And they're rolling with this story. So Doeg has his little moment. That's where we meet Doeg. David eats the consecrated bread. And there's a whole bit of that where another character that we're going to talk about in a little bit kind of confronts Jesus about consecrated things and things set apart to God. But after this, the priest in the area gives David the sword of Goliath, the Philistine, and now David's got like he's like equipped for battle. He's got his kit, rightfully his, and he goes out, and we're told that in 1 Samuel 22, David is fleeing from Saul, and Doeg the Edomite gives the report to Saul. He kind of narks on David and says, no, David is at Nob. He's with the priest of Nob, and he's actually collecting a sword. He's collecting Goliath's sword. And before I'll explain why I picked Doeg, but the story is I think it's funny. It's not funny because how the story ends is very sad for the people of Nob. But Doeg he's a shrewd fellow, because he sees David interacting with this priest, and he like goes and tells Saul, hey, David was interacting with the priest of Nob, and I saw him get a really big sword, and I can't help but in my brain, for whatever reason I fill in the gaps that Saul is like, David's got that sword for me. Like Saul's trying to kill David, and I think in many ways Doeg is playing to some of Saul's insecurities. He's like, yeah, I saw him get Goliath's sword. He's heading out, and so Doeg, he stirs the pot, and to the point where Saul goes and he kills all the priests at Nob. He goes on a rampage, and he kills this town of priests. Men, women, children, cattle, donkeys, sheep, he just like lays waste to this town. We're told that one of the priests escapes. It's like a son of Ahimelech. We don't get like at this point in the story a name. But he finds David. Again, David at this point is now hiding out in a cave, and he comes to him and he reports to him that Doeg the Edomite is like the reason that this bad thing happened. And that the guys who came and killed all the people back in Nob, where I came from, they are on their way to try to find you and kill you. And David reassures him, is like, if you stick with me, we're going to do this together. And we see this difference in through Doeg and this priest of like Doeg seems to be in it for himself. He's like, ooh, what can I take advantage of in this moment to maybe promote myself or even get some sort of benefit. I'm going to tell on David to King Saul. I'm going to, a whole town of priests and their families and all this stuff got killed, but at least I'm in good with Saul, maybe as good as David once was. Now, I don't know. In my brain, I think Doeg's trying to get David's old job, but that's a lot of me reading between the lines. But just the contrast of that and how Saul responds to the threat. Saul responds by attack and action and just rampage, and Doeg's like they're signing off. And then you have David, who's like in a cave. He's got this tiny band of people who's begun to follow him. And then this priest who's totally now has no home, it's been destroyed, comes to David, and David's not like, yeah, we're going to go out and murderize King Saul. He's like, you know what? They are trying to seek your life. They're trying to seek my life, but we're going to stick together. And this priest kind of goes with David. And we kind of see the subtext here is like the priest ends up aligning himself with who we know is going to end up being the king, whereas this kind of dark troublemaker character aligns himself with Saul, the current king. And so Doeg, the fun little piece where like, okay, is they believe, now there's not like book chapter verse to say this for sure. But they believe that I'm just going to read a portion of it. Psalm 52, and it notes in the description of this psalm. So this is where people get this, but it says, to the choir master, a maskil of David, when Doeg the Edomite came and told Saul, David has come to the house of Ahimelech. So this psalm was written specifically for the fact that this guy did this thing and as a result got these priests killed. So I'm going to read this psalm, and this is kind of, it's one of those weird moments where you can almost line up David's poetry and his poetic life to the things happening. But it says, and this is going to give us a real picture of I think David understood something about Doeg and who he was. It says, why do you boast of evil, O mighty man? The steadfast love of God endures all the day. Your tongue plots destruction. Like a sharp razor, you worker of deceit. You love evil more than good, and lying more than speaking what is right. Selah. You love all words that devour, O deceitful tongue, but God will break you down forever. He will snatch and tear you from your tent. He will uproot you from the land of the living. Selah. The righteous shall see and fear and shall laugh at him, saying, see the man who would not make God his refuge, and trusted in the abundance of his riches and sought refuge to his own destruction. I'm like a green olive tree in the house of God. I trust in the steadfast love of God forever and ever. I will thank you forever because you have done it. I will wait for your name, for it is good in the presence of the godly. It's I don't know. It's kind of a dark psalm at the beginning because I mean it's a psalm of pretty straightforward condemnation and judgment towards, I mean, really Doeg, but people like Doeg who have evil on the mind. They tend towards these things, and which I think it can be hard. It can be easy to hear that and go, well, everybody, we all are sinners. But I think David has in mind this person who, knowing like that God has a plan, and that like in the face of all of these priests, in the face of him hearing Ahimelech speak with David, would do this thing just to try to get a leg up. And so that picture in the psalm of just like the destruction and being pretty much called out and held accountable for it. And then you have David writing that like he's like a green olive tree in the house of God. It's so great because he's, in the setting where this psalm is, like he's in a cave hiding, but to him, like the fact that he is doing the things that God is hopefully calling him to do, and he believes in that, he can rest a little bit, even though they're being chased around. He's not like Doeg. He doesn't have to live with God kind of hanging over him. So that's that feeling of like Doeg doesn't have a lot of redeeming qualities. We don't get a lot of like, oh, and then he lived happily ever after. We don't really get that with Doeg. He's just kind of this instigator who causes the destruction of a city and makes David's life much, much harder. And then he kind of disappears into anonymity. He is related to he is an Edomite, so that's like the Israelites' kind of cousins-ish is the way to think about it, and they've long had trouble with the Edomite people. Just a brief note, in the book of 1 Samuel, we're going through it with our young adult crew. Chapters before this, that's how I landed on him. I was like, oh, this guy's a rascal. But chapters before this, they had trouble with the Edomites. Israel had trouble with the Edomites earlier on in 1 Samuel. And so to me, I'm like, oh, okay, how did Doeg end up allied to Saul? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, he seems to be this guy that kind of blows where the wind takes him to try to find the most advantageous person to like hitch his cart to. And as I think, like, I look out, I see that a lot, you know, this people that might be willing to cave and give in their morals to benefit themselves, like, despite what it might have for others. And as scary as it can be, like, the words of David in Psalm are they're pretty stark for, in this case, Doeg, but maybe someone who would, knowing the things of God, be willing to like actively try to, just take advantage of those and use them for sinful gain. So that's Doeg the Edomite. I yapped a lot there, but do you have any thoughts about him, Jesse?
Doeg reminds me of, if you're reading a novel, a regular book, he's that guy who foils the getaway. And that's kind of a lot of what David's story is. It's a fun, almost like a novel-like story of this guy surviving until he becomes king. But Doeg, I think there's something there with him being an Edomite. Can you remind me, Hunter, does that come from Esau?
Yes.
That line of people? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, the Edomites are descendants from Esau.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, a lot of... the more I read the Old Testament, the more I find these lines of relationships of like, oh, this person is like a descendant of this person way back who originally caused trouble for this main character.
The name lists, though sometimes boring, I will admit, they're there for a reason, and there's always some weird juicy nugget just buried in there somewhere. And
that's something I have a really hard time with, is the names and the geography, which is really important, because they use those names and places as it represents something that happened there, or something. There's just meaning in it that I miss because I don't pay attention.
Right. While you were, I remembered this. So Doeg's name, like the meaning of his name is related to this idea of anxiousness. But it's also related to this idea of caring for something. I think it's at the heart of that would be like caring for something and anxiousness almost together, where it's like you not are worried about it, but you want to make sure that this thing is perfectly taken care of, and you almost like worry yourself with that. Mm-hmm. And there's some irony, because like it seems like he is the only one that he has that, bent towards, is making sure things are just fine for him. But anyway,
Doeg
the Edomite.
How fun, in a sad kind of way.
Yeah, another sad story in the Bible. It's full of them. Somehow I find them the most fascinating. But
Yeah.
Jesse, why don't you share who you are bringing this week?
Sure.
Yeah.
I want to talk about the Pharisees, the sect, the group of, I guess you would call them religious leaders. They have a few. We'll talk about it. They have a few titles. I want to present them first with a little extracurricular info about them before we get into the Gospels, where they really shine.
Yeah.
The Pharisees began popping up by name during the intertestamental period, the Second Temple. And the things they value and the things they emphasize relate all the way back to Moses at Mount Sinai, and specifically the exile that Israelites experienced in Babylon, because they no longer had access to the temple, and so there was emphasis on practicing Judaism outside of the temple, because that's hard to do. So they are connected with the Maccabean revolt from the 160s before Christ. Remember, the BCs go backwards with numbers before they get to the AD, where numbers go forward. But the Pharisees were made up of scribes and just common people, the laymen, who believed in the importance and specifically the authority of the oral law. And just a little tidbit there about the oral law. The oral law was an addition of the Torah, the law that was given to Moses on Mount Sinai. The thought was, or I guess still is, that Moses received the written law and the oral law at the same time. And so the oral law includes commentary on the written Torah. The written Torah is the first 5 books of the Bible, and in there's like 613 individual laws about very specific things. And so the oral law is supposed to be this commentary on how to live out those things in your everyday life. It eventually gets written down. It's written down after Jesus ascends to heaven, after the destruction of the Second Temple. Again, kind of a second Babylon period where they can't practice their religion in a temple. So honestly, the modern state of Judaism now is directly influenced from the Pharisees of Jesus' time. They respected and deeply valued the Torah, the writings and the prophets, and the oral law. We have them to thank for how strict everything was written down. So the written oral law became known as the Talmud. And in the Talmud, there's 2 main sections called the Mishnah, which is the codification of the laws, and the Gemara, which is a commentary on the Mishnah. So basically, it's the things that the Pharisees valued was practical, everyday, how do I live out the law of Moses? That's something they valued a lot. So when we see Jesus arguing with, I think the NLT calls them lawyers, which is kind of fun. But when we see Jesus in debate with people, it's usually these Pharisees.
That name is so good, considering like they are like the law.
Yeah.
Like that. It's so it's so tongue in cheek. I'm sorry. Anyway.
Yeah.
That's good.
So that's their value system. Just to bring that into shape. The Pharisees were part of the Sanhedrin, which included another group, or you could use the word sect, of Sadducees, and there was a third one called the Essenes. But they left because they felt that both the Pharisees and the Sadducees were corrupt, and so the Essenes went out into the desert and they lived in communes. They developed a very strict dietary system, more strict than the law, and they became basically monks. They were celibate, did all this stuff there. And we have the Essenes to thank for the Dead Sea Scrolls. That's who wrote those things. So the Pharisees were kind of political, but they themselves did not have political power. They had influence, which is kind of like political power, but they didn't have a place to exercise it. They had people that they would go to. And we see this specifically where they wanted to kill Jesus, they wanted to remove him, but they couldn't do it. And so they used their influence to go to the Roman head honcho guy, Pilate, and they asked him to do it. So we see that in history. Josephus, a Roman Jewish historian after the time of Jesus, he writes about Pharisees and talks about how they integrated themselves relationship-wise with people to safeguard their religion, what they thought was the right religion, and because of the temple being destroyed and stuff like that. So they would try to be very subtle in their politics, which, I mean, if you look at the history, which we don't have to, but if you look at the history of this time period, it was very complicated. There were people ruling people, ruling people, ruling people. Yeah. And the Pharisees were ruling people at the bottom of the barrel. So
shots fired.
I mean, we see in the Gospel of Mark an example of this where the Pharisees ally themselves with Herodians because they're trying to debate Jesus and they try to entrap him in different things. So we see this happening. They use their influence, but they don't have any political leeway. They have influence, relationships they build. So that's kind of the overview. They're a group of people. The Sadducees, similar. They were part of the Sanhedrin too. They were priests, and they had very specific things that they were kind of like considered elitists. They were very literal with the law and with the word and stuff. They did not consider the writings and the prophets necessarily as divinely inspired. They just held to the Torah, the first 5 books, and they did not believe in the resurrection. This is Sadducees. Pharisees did. They did. They valued the whole kit and caboodle, everything. And honestly, a lot of our Christian translations and stuff, a lot of it is based on the Septuagint, the Greek writings of the Old Testament. But the Pharisees are the people to thank for the Masoretic text, which is the other side of the two things there. So there is a lot to credit Pharisees. They were very careful. They were how do you say that, Hunter? They were so careful that it became a problem.
I think at the heart of that is, I think legalism is kind of at the heart of that. Like, I think legalism is more the system that you set up to protect that idea.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's, I think it's fear. I really do. I think they lost the heart of the law, and you know what I mean? Like, and I think that's a lot
Jesus
of like,
would argue that. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's a lot of like when Jesus on the Sermon on the Mount, he's like, I came to fulfill the law. I think that's kind of what he was, I don't even know if there was Pharisees like on the scene at that point. I know that the crowd was there, but we don't get a lot of info about Pharisees at that stage in his ministry. But man, they had to have heard word that he was saying that, Oh, yeah. And I think for them, the idea that someone would say like, oh, I'm fulfilling the thing that they, spend so much time trying to guard is like, who are you? Like, so yeah, a lot of it is. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
I've heard a Christian scholar describe the Pharisees. He was trying to look at the situation of Jesus and his teachings from their point of view. And he was saying in their mind, they were the protagonists. They were the ones defending their faith, their practice of faith. And the way the scholar, I wish I could remember his name, the way he described it was like the immune system responding to Jesus, who was a good thing, as you and I believe, but they were responding like an immune system attacking a good thing of like, they didn't recognize it and they were trying to get rid of it.
Yeah.
And so that's how this scholar described it, which it's an analogy, so that's helpful for me, of health stuff. But Jesus had some choice words for Pharisees.
Oh yeah, he did.
And as we look at, oh, I'm sorry, Hunter, did you have something to say?
Oh, I was going to say, I think, and I don't want to speak for this group of people because I am not a member of this group of people, but I think there would be many Jewish people today who, much like the Pharisees then, that would be also their concern with Jesus. That would be the grounds on which they would say, yeah, he is not the Messiah. Yeah, I think that, as you said, much of Jewish belief today comes out of that oral law, that oral tradition, the years after Christ. I think just as a result, I think there's many today that still would point to and would still, like that immune system attacking a good thing, say no because of these things, and it continues to be that barrier.
Yeah. As we understand kind of the Pharisees' values and where they're coming from, we can then understand the threat Jesus posed to them. Because Jesus was not only pulling away from their influence, the influence they had on people, but he was teaching things that chipped away at what they had safeguarding, what they were keeping.
Right.
And so it makes a lot of sense why Jesus was a threat to them, because they had the support of the people. They were in good standing. They were very pious, which Jesus mocked and criticized, and were to the point where they would pray publicly in front of people with like outstretched hands and shouting and weeping and throwing dust and things on their heads. Which Jesus said that's a bit much. You just go in a room and pray by yourself.
Chill out.
Like things like that, where they were being so careful and intentional in being righteous and walking according to the law. The Apostle Paul, like he claimed, I was a Pharisee of Pharisees. Like I adhered to the law in the most strictest manner. There was a pride and respect that was kind of around Pharisees. They were so mindful of their faith and of Moses and his laws. So with Jesus coming around and teaching things that they kind of agreed with, like when they tried to ask him, what's the most important law in all not just like what we call the 10 Commandments, but all like 600 something laws. And Jesus picks the one that they agree with. They're like, yeah, actually, we agree with that. So
absolute
like,
gangster, just
to hear Jesus teach, and then like obviously they didn't agree with everything he taught, because that is kind of the catalyst of a few things. But with a lot of the things they tried to trap him in, they ended up either not knowing what to say in response or agreeing with him. And so it was a big threat to them. And Jesus, probably in the most scathing response we have towards the Pharisees, is in Matthew chapter 23. And he goes on, it's an entire paragraph after paragraph after paragraph, an entire section of Jesus saying things like, "Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, you are hypocrites." And that's the starting phrase, and then he'll give something like, For you build the tombs of the prophets and decorate the monuments of the righteous, saying, if we had lived in the days of our fathers, we would not have taken part with them in shedding the blood of the prophets. Thus you witness against yourselves that you are sons of those who murdered the prophets. And then he talks about them doing the same thing, which they end up doing. They kill Jesus, and then they kill Stephen. Oh, that's a good point. I just realized. So with Stephen, they didn't take Stephen to any Roman authorities. They murdered him. They stoned him.
Yeah.
And that's another clue to the influence that they could muster. The reason they took Jesus to Pilate, to the Roman authorities, was they wanted a public, they wanted a execution.
Yeah.
With Stephen, they became furious, and they rushed him and stoned him, and I'm sure there would have been a slap on the wrist for that, politically speaking.
Yeah.
But also, they got away with a lot. There was a lot of room they had that they developed for themselves because of influence they were able to shore up. So that's an example of Stephen's death and Christ's death, where they wanted something specific with Christ. They wanted a public spectacle to be made of, like, his teachings, what he's doing, we don't want any part with. And that's the greatest criticism of the Pharisees.
Yes. It's the greatest criticism of the Pharisees, and I think in many, like, I know, I don't know the book, but there's like arguments for Christ, case for Christ or something. They point to the most rigorous Jewish people. Their response to Jesus is so stark that it's like they themselves knew how serious this guy was, that then they responded at the level of seriousness that he posed, this new thing to them. So, but yeah, pretty fun. One of my favorite parts, I don't know if I can find it this quick, is he calls in Matthew chapter 23. Is he calls them? There it is, verse 27. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! What?
For you are like whitewashed tombs, which outwardly appear beautiful, but within are full of dead people's bones and all uncleanness. Now that part in particular is an absolute insult, because they were so careful about washing their hands. They would not eat any food without washing their hands. They even go after Jesus' disciples, asking, like, why don't you guys wash your hands before you eat? Yeah. That was a big deal to them. Being clean, being ceremonially clean, being morally clean, all of this, that insult slaps, because it's just everything they're avoiding. And Jesus calls them dead people's bones that look nice. Yeah, on the inside, he's like, you like on the inside, at the core of who you are is unclean. It's like, woof. Yeah, that's a good point. Jesus he played hardball with the Pharisees, man. I'm going to say in all cases, rightfully so. It's like, because it's easy to, I think on one hand, you could look at Jesus's interactions with them as like, man, that's kind of harsh. But like, keep in mind, this is also the group of people that, like, when Jesus is saying, let the little children come to me, the significant is like, they were not allowing the kids, the sick, the infirm, the poor to access the temple, or they were kept from it. And when you start to look at that, it's like, oh, okay, there's a seedy thing going on here. If you don't mind, one of my favorite parables is the parable of the prodigal son. And it's Jesus actually addressing the Pharisees, and that prodigal is so, or that parable, the prodigal son, it's so prominent. Like, I think that's one of Jesus's parables that even if you're not a
a Bible scholar or a person familiar with the Bible, you've probably heard of it. Do you know what I mean? Like, and
Yeah.
there's so often like we hear that story and it's, we gravitate, and the main character is this son who's gone off, squanders his father's wealth, and then comes back and then is received back by the father. But Jesus is so good at just telling a story and driving the point home, because I think all of the Pharisees would have been like, yes, he's squandered it. And then Jesus like heel turns and he's like, and the older brother didn't get it. And then, and it's just like the Pharisees are standing there going, okay. And it's a very like, even, but I share that to say like, even when Jesus, I mean, he's like, you hypocrites, you brood of, he also in that moment with the parable of the prodigal son, it's a call to the Pharisees to be like, you don't have to be like this older brother. You can celebrate like along with those who are finding and coming to God. You can join this. You don't have to be the older brother. Now I don't know how many did. I think not Nicodemus.
Nicodemus, it was Nicodemus.
Is that John 3?
Yeah, that's John 3.
Yeah.
I think there's one in Acts too, where it's like they used to be a Pharisee, but they came out of it, type of thing. Yeah,
we do get these shining little like moments where it's like the Pharisees too are able to, be reached by the good news of Jesus. I mean, I know that sounds weird to say, but I think as Christians sometimes it's good to remember that like they are not Satan. Like they can also, they are redeemable. They're not.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying.
Good.
I don't think anyone would say they're
Right.
too far gone, but there's definitely thoughts of like, there's no way.
Well, I think a lot of people, they get to the point where it's like, they're the ones that like pushed for Jesus to die. How could they, but it's like, well, the theological significance of Jesus and the weight of sin on the cross is like, we're probably more in the Pharisee camp on that story than we are in the other camp. And it's like, ooh. Yeah. No, that's good, Jesse. The Pharisees. You have to do the Sadducees next time, and we can argue about whether or not, anyway, what that whole we're going to be like angels and glory is going to be about. It'd be fun. There's total agreement in the church on things like that. No, that's good. And I think a lot of this, I'm gonna be just put in. This will probably get cut. My brain's like, what's the connection? Like I always try to like do a little connection, but like Doeg is out here. He seems to be truly just in this for himself. And I think there's times where the Pharisees were in it for themselves, but like you said, I think they were motivated by a desire to do it right. Like I think, they genuinely woke up. I don't know many, even like modern day, religions or sects or whatever that get it skewed. I don't think they wake up and say, okay, what can we corrupt about this good message today? Like they really buy into it,
Yeah.
Well,
look at Paul, I guess Saul. He truly believed what he was doing.
Yeah, he sure did. He was signing papers all day about it. No. Yeah. Was he of the Pharisees?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. When he has that long list, and what is that, Philippians? I was this, I was the most of this.
Oh, yeah. It's like the
I was
like
a
the
Pharisee
rap sheet.
of Pharisees. Yeah.
Paul's rap sheet.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. So there's one.
Oh, but he had he had a little more than Nicodemus had to get out of it.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. His story would have been so much wilder if it's like, and you are blind the rest of your life. It's like, wait.
Oh, wow.
Like I had the fact that that's something that he gets his sight restored is like, okay, that's great. Cause who knows? I mean, he could have, it would have been a different different story. God had plans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know we're winding down a little bit, but just as a wind down, I really like Nicodemus. He seems like a solid guy to me. Someone who's truly, like, if we take the Pharisees as what they present themselves as, which is trying to be the best they can be and trying to preserve their religion, which they did. Modern Judaism is a direct cause of the Pharisees.
They were successful.
But then we have Nicodemus coming to Jesus at night in John chapter 3, which we have it's a subtlety, but he's trying not to be seen. He comes to Jesus and he tells him, like you're doing stuff that no one else can do. Like you have to have something. Like, what's going on? And Jesus, I'm not sure what's going on with the writings, like if it's purposefully trying to make a point by making Nicodemus be a little lower understanding than he actually was. I'm not sure. But when Jesus talks about being born again, Nicodemus takes that so literally.
Yeah.
When Pharisees were totally okay with not being literal.
Yeah.
The Sadducees were the literal ones. They were the ones who took everything very literal. Pharisees were okay with analogies. Like that's how they taught. Where did Jesus learn to do all those things?
Right.
Parables was a huge way of teaching. Mm-hmm. And so I have a hard time really understanding why Nicodemus took that so literally. I'm not sure if John was using that as a point for us, the audience. I'm not sure. But that conversation is a wonderful example of a true seeker who really is in it. Like, he's coming from a camp that's really in it. And he comes to Jesus and he wants to know the truth. And he gets to have that that conversation with Jesus. We get the famous John 3:16. We use it all the time. That came from Nicodemus. Yeah, in the middle of the night. Nicodemus. That was Nicodemus talking and really seeking to know Jesus and to know, what do you know that I don't? Yeah. And what do I need to know? And I respect that. I respect that a lot.
And I think from the perspective of Nicodemus, this is one like Pharisee, but one like Hebrew scholar, for lack of a better way of saying it, one teacher of the law coming to another teacher to hash it out. And like, we as Christians, we're reading it and it's like, oh, this is a Pharisee coming to Jesus, like the Son of God. But like in Nicodemus's brain, he's like, this teacher's been teaching some stuff and he's doing things that seem impossible for him to be able to be doing while being teaching this stuff that seems so pushing up against what we're doing. And I think he went to kind of go like settle a concern with a fellow teacher, and gets like the biggest spiritual you got to be born again, John 3:16, I didn't come to condemn the world. He gets like a true theological dumperoo, and it's like, and then he walks away, and then it's like, well, where's he at? And then he pops up into the book and is like helping Jesus with the burial and it's like, John is so cagey because he never comes out and says, yep, and Nicodemus believed in Jesus. Yeah. But he just leads us to the point where it's like, he's there and he is doing things that a follower of Christ, you would find someone who cares about Jesus doing. Man, I feel like we could just talk about Pharisees for another hour.
Probably.
Maybe we'll have to do a Pharisees conversation one day and just really dive in on some of their theology, because some of it is fascinating. Like, well, very good. We're gonna close this out. Listener, thank you all for being here. Thank you for joining us for another God and Sinners. I enjoy doing these mostly because it's fun to bounce with these characters and talk about it. But I hope you all enjoy them. yeah, if you're going to hear Marta here in just a few minutes, but go check out what we're doing. We got all sorts of stuff going on. Jesse's been working hard on a. Does it feel like you're staring down another big project starting the Old Testament?
Yes.
Yeah,
but it's okay because we're doing the minor prophets first, so it's okay.
Yeah. There's nothing that's huge and looming in it, so that'll be good. No, but we're excited. We got a lot going on, and we're ramping up. We got a 1st, 2nd, 3rd John series that's kicked off, and we're excited to be. I'm excited for it because I haven't looked into some of that a little bit. So, but yeah, I hope you guys are enjoying. Marta will tell you the rest. Jesse, thanks for joining me today on this and bringing the Pharisees and talking about it. Well, cool. Well, thank you all for being here. We will catch you guys next time. Love y'all, and we'll see you soon.
Bye.
Bye, y'all.
Thank you for listening to Pickled Parables. If you enjoyed this message, please rate us, subscribe, and share with your friends. If you're interested in more things like this, check out our secondary podcast called My Dusty Bible. To stay up to date with all things Parable, follow us on Instagram at Parable_Ministries and visit our website at parableministries.com. Parable is a volunteer organization, and we would deeply appreciate your prayers. Thank you for joining us today. We'll catch you later.